This here is a challenge campaign that was submitted to me, where the challenge is to try and stabilize this disaster. You got Belagar and Ungrim, two major dwarf factions that are barreling down on us, on top of Elspeth, who has a one-turn recovery time, which means the moment you kill her, she comes back at full HP. We're 2 turns away from bankruptcy, and the Empire has already lost 50% of its settlements. And because this campaign has mostly been a raiding economy, it means most of the settlements aren't even that built up. So there's not a lot of money to go around, and our armies kind of suck too. Essentially, all we have are 2 stacks of tier 1 and 2 goblins against elite Empire infantry helmed by Elspeth and Gotrek. At this point, I'm sure a lot of people would have quit this campaign already, but I think it's salvageable. Now, this battle probably could be won with a little bit of cheese, and while I have nothing against cheese, I feel like we could probably tackle this campaign without. So knowing we're probably going to be losing this battle, my goal is to inflict as much damage as possible to the enemy range units, because a melee only army is not going to perform very well in battle. So with my main force, I pile on hundreds of goblins onto the Empire cavalry to stop them from getting too much impact damage in. And once they're distracted, my second army sweeps in through the back and takes out more or less all of their artillery. And while that's getting completely chased off the map, I have a bit of extra time to punish their ranged infantry before Elspeth massacres my entire main army. Now, while losing 2 armies to the Empire may seem pretty bad, it does solve our economy issue very well. This saves me just enough money to summon some regiments of renown, and they're really good in a pinch. They are quite expensive, but they can be summoned in immediately, which means that against Elspeth, my army is going to be slightly larger than it was before. And with the addition of a few large monsters, which can no longer be shot at by her ranged units, we can surround Elspeth, and we actually manage to take her out, after which her main army can then be surrounded, which results in a win for the Greenskins. Just like in lore, while they may lose a few battles, the waves upon waves of their attacks will eventually wear you down. So with Elspeth out of the question, for now, and our economy solved by slightly dubious means, we can now turn our attention to the north against Ungrim Iron Fist. He's sieging my very small goblin army at Karazakarak, and I don't really like this very much. I could sacrifice this goblin army just like the last one to Elspeth, but if I lose Karazakarak, it's not going to go too well for me. You see, the settlement is very high level, and it's a natural choke point too. This means I can use it as an area to recruit new units, and effectively stop the dwarves at a single choke point. But if Ungrim takes the settlement, it'll decrease in level, and when I recapture it, it'll decrease again. This will hurt the defensiveness of the area by a ton, and I can't really afford that because I need to be putting my armies elsewhere to defend the rest of the Empire. So while the Goblin army there is a little expensive, it's gonna be worth it because I have some newly recruited armies to head north to save it. Now the Savior army composition might surprise a few of you. It's not especially elite, and usually people default to doom stacking to solve disaster campaigns. And while it would certainly make this battle a lot easier, I can't really afford to make a doom stack because my economy is not doing very well, and that means if I put all my money towards a doom stack, it means my western flank against Belagar's dwarves is simply going to be undefended. I can't afford to let that happen because I don't intend to lose more territory this campaign, so we're gonna make do with less. Thankfully, there's a tendency of the AI to recruit weaker stacks after the main army has been defeated. It's mostly because of recruiting from conquered lands, which means while large, this army composition is composed mostly of lower tier units. So while they do outnumber me 2-1, they can't really win in a straight up fight because they have primarily ranged units and relatively weak melee infantry. A little bit of flanking ensures that their ranged units can't contribute to the fight, and the fact that the AI deployed so close to the white line actually hurts them quite a bit here. Because fully surrounded, Empire forces are going to be routing off pretty often. It would be a lot of effort to escort these guys off the map with my units because there's simply so many of them, but this positioning means I can fully route them off the map without having to commit my units to the chase. Now with that speed bump cleared and Gorbad taking out Elspeth again, we can now resume Operation Save Karazakarak, and it's looking like it'll probably be a nasty fight. Kirkadrin specializes in Slayers, who are essentially dwarven melee berserkers that can't really be abused like the ranged Empire forces. They're unbreakable, which means they'll fight to the last, and my forces are very much so breakable. The dwarves do win the first engagement, mostly because of how hard they are to rout, but because most of my guys ran off the battlefield, the second fight is quite a bit better for me. One thing you might not know about leadership is that leadership penalties will only come into play for damage you take during the battle. And that means all the injured units from the previous battle will more or less be fighting to the last in this one. This lets me mop up everything but the dwarven heroes, and while I lose, they're in absolutely no shape to take my settlement now. So now I have a defensive settlement to hold back Ungrim, and Gorbad is doing a great job defeating the endless tides of Elspeth. It gets a little bit sketchy with how many armies she's sending my way, but Gorbad has this very nice crown which makes them a beast in combat. And yeah, maybe it might cause me some diplomacy issues, but it's too fun to pass up, right? Let's just keep it for now. And it's certainly going to help us out a lot with Belagar's armies. So he's sending more traditional dwarven armies with a lot of armor and a lot of range. Players can have a pretty hard time dealing with these armies, but as long as you're hyper aggressive and don't go into a shooting contest with them, you'll be just fine. Just make sure you go for them surrounds, and if none of their units are shooting, you know you're doing good. Because I do experience what happens if you're not able to shut down their ranged. I very mistakenly take a battle against Ungrim's army in an underway map, which is essentially just a really long hallway. I can't get behind them, which means basically everything is able to shoot, and my pump wagons just get absolutely disintegrated. And that causes a few other issues too, with the crown on Gorbad's head decreasing my diplomacy, and the fact that my armies are slightly smaller now because of that loss. Thoric decides to join the fight. He's no slouch, but I can ensure that we take every single battle against him above ground. But while dwarves are scary, they're really the only opponent I have to deal with now, so I can tune all my armies to essentially be counter dwarf armies. That means a bunch of relatively cheap infantry that I can throw on top of their range units, and trolls to actually do the smashing. The army's cheap enough to spam across my borders, and with them winning a ton of battles, they're collecting a lot of loot to pay for themselves too. And I'll let you see just how effective this composition can be at tearing apart the very proud Dowie. So there you go. My empire has a bunch of defensive choke points, which are essentially farming the dwarves for cash. So even though my economy is vastly in the negatives, if you actually look at it turn by turn, we are still gaining money. I even accidentally lost the crown that was ruining my diplomacy, so it's pretty easy to imagine how we can carry out the rest of the campaign. But for me, I think I'm done fighting dwarves for the next little while. We'll call this campaign saved, and if you want to submit a challenge for me, feel free to on my Discord or through email. I've been itching to do more disaster campaigns, so I really hope you're looking forward to the next one.